Welcome to a Geometric Conjecture. Not everyone has the interest or capacity for natural philosophy, albeit the infinitely large, the infinitely small, and the infinitely complex. Yet, perhaps for at least one moment of every day, we lament our ignorance to such matters, for that is to be human. So indulge me as we continue to reconcile it all, for that too is to be human. And in the end, we must have experiences in common in order to understand one another. It's insufficient to use the same words and phrases, as the interpretation of ideas often differ from person to person, or is otherwise anticipated. So when we talk about something, say a proton, an electron, or je ne sais quoi, we never really come to know that thing. The best we can hope for is to talk about it metaphorically, in a language we hope is common enough. Often, what one wants something to mean is not what people use it to mean. In this regard, the village is asked to be forgiving, for language is a conduit, an interaction between two parties or opposites. Herein the notion of polarity or duplicity, a mimicry or echo of some balancing parasympathetic entity, a yin and yang, predicated by the fact that opposites by nature are elusive. In a sense, they're phantoms, implied innuendos, such as this interaction between you and me, utilizing these words and illustrations. As the conversation moves, the goalposts shift. Our interaction is implied rather than explicit. Things don't exist as things in themselves. Instead, we perceive events existing over time through reciprocating interactions or entanglement with other events. Although much of natural philosophy is open to interpretation, all concur fundamental particles are mathematical constructs, and all agree we are literally events ourselves, constantly jiggling. Magnitudes and associated symbols are homocentric contrivances, for nature does not count or register things. Nature merely responds to density or pressure gradients. Thus, euphemistically, nature is a contrast in scale, a contrast in magnitude. By making an analogy with a number line, we can assign a certain density or pressure between successive integers. Pretend that we then have to overcome that density or pressure in order to pop out of one magnitude into another. In other words, popping into or out of a magnitude equates to breaching a certain threshold capacitance. The capacitance is what holds us in a particular state. Now, by extending this analogy, we can transpose a base 10 number line over a base 9 number line, and from our vantage, we notice 729 base 10 is 1000 base 9. So we've lost 270 base 10 integers. Now a quirky question is, where art thou? Answered with, well, mathematics is an abstraction from nature, so we haven't literally lost them. However, our extending analogy with density or pressure gradients is a literal abstraction from mathematics. So imagine now halving 2 atoms of gold so that we are left with 1 atom. If we then halve that atom, our metaphor for gold ceases to exist, as there are no properties nor physicality left to discern. In other words, the gold has become unsubstantiated, now morphing with those mathematical constructs known as quarks and electrons. Yet, gold can be reconstituted or transmuted and emerge from that void of those very same constructs. And if we construe the void as an exordium of trinities, each a geometrical construct, our resultant impression is that things do in fact emerge out of nowhere. The vacuum of space is indeed an exordium of trinities, or a mathematical ether, the alphabet in which the universe is writ. So more than a little something is beseeching us to at least ask the question, are nature, mathematics, and consciousness posterior attributes or abstractions of one another? For it is most interesting that our fundamental particles render in both base 9 and base 10 in the toroidal surfaces of master maps. And synonymous patterns of behavior persist in our Sun-Earth-Moon system. So too with the Great Pyramid. We'll didactically breach and fathom those objects in matters of magnitude 2 and 3.